I think a lot of people are held back because they think everything needs to perfectly align before they take a first step in a different direction.
Yeah.
I think if you can listen to your inner voice, it's probably telling you what to do.
Yeah.
If it's telling you to go a different direction, just work to develop the courage to take the first step and know that it might be a step in a slightly wrong direction, but you can always change it along the way.
Welcome back to the What Went Wrong podcast, where we tell the untold stories of bouncing back. I am your host, Tabitha Thorell, and today I have an amazing guest, Christian Espinosa. He is a veteran, a blood clot survivor, successful entrepreneur that has built and sold a cybersecurity company, CEO and founder of Blue Goat Cyber, 24x Ironman triathlete, and 2 times best-selling author. He's also skydive, mountain climber, adventure. He aims to inspire others and harness their innate wisdom. Guys, I am so excited for this. And Christian, with all your accolades, we cannot wait to hear from you. But we all know that you did not start at the mountaintop, right? And my audience is dying to know what went wrong.
Well, there's quite a few things that went wrong. I paid a lot of the dumb tax, as they say. One of the significant challenges I had was in 2020, was during COVID.
Yeah.
I had a lot of areas of my life I felt trapped. I felt trapped in my relationship. I was dating a woman in Ireland, and there's all these travel restrictions. And in Ireland, you couldn't uh, go more than 5 kilometers from where you live without the cops stopping you. And it was, I just felt trapped. I couldn't even go on a hike in Ireland, for instance. And we thought we had it bad in the United States. It was very bad over there.
Yeah.
And I had just sold my company to a publicly traded company, and I sold it for stock. And while I was employed with the company, I could never sell the stock. There's always a continual blackout period. And I couldn't do any Ironmans, because those were no longer on the table. I couldn't go to concerts. I had bought tickets to my favorite band, Nightwish, and I couldn't go see that. Those were all canceled. And I hated working for the parent company. So I felt, and I had this run in with the CEO. I felt trapped in like all these aspects of my life. And what ended up happening is in early 2021, because I started feeling trapped in 2020, I developed 6 blood clots in my left leg and nearly died. And it's interesting. I wrote about this in my latest book. The way the doctor told me, he's like, "You got 6 blood clots in your left leg." And I don't know what blood clots are. I thought I was healthy. I thought things like this don't happen to people like me. I do Ironman triathlon. I work out all the time. And I just done like 100 burpees the day before.
Yeah.
And he said to me that I could die or have a stroke at any moment. And I kind of freaked out about it. I think, man, my life is going to be over. Like, did I live a good life? Did I take a risk? And everything just kind of went through my head. And he said something that kind of pissed me off. He said, "Oh, don't worry. I see this all the time." And I said, "Well, I don't. This is a first for me."
Yeah.
I think he was trying to be empathetic, but it had the opposite effect. And I wrote about that in my last book. But after that, they gave me a blood thinner. I went and sat in my vehicle in the parking lot and just sort of cried. I thought, man, my whole life is over. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Anything I wanted was off the table. They told me I couldn't run. I couldn't travel. I couldn't do anything but basically sit on the couch and take blood thinners and get better. And that put me in like a really depressed place for a long time. I was just sitting in my basement, like watching reruns of Yellowstone and things like that. And my ambition for life kind of went away. Even though I felt like I should be grateful that I was still alive, it went away. And I remember going through that depression for a long time. And then one day I looked at the bottle of blood thinners I was taking. And the irony is I had quit the parent company shortly after that. And I couldn't get insurance anymore because I now had a pre-existing condition. So I had outrageous insurance costs, and the blood thinners were costing me like $600 a month. And ironically made by the same company that created the vaccine, because I think the vaccine was also a contributor to the clots. But I decided, looking at those blood thinners one day, that I was going to reclaim my health, reclaim my life. And I just sort of threw them across the room. and went and got every single blood test done possible. I got a Doppler ultrasound done of my leg to make sure there were no possible clots. And I decided in that moment that I was just going to reclaim my life, because what I realized in that state I was in, I didn't have the confidence to do anything. When I quit the parent company, I didn't start a new business. I was just sort of hanging out, feeling depressed, but also I thought I'm going to be comfortable. I should be comfortable and grateful with this lifestyle, but that wasn't a lifestyle I wanted
Right.
on all fronts. It was affecting me on all fronts: my relationship, my business, because I didn't start a new business,
Right.
and just my confidence in general. So when I made that decision to reclaim my health, I decided to form a new business, Blue Goat Cyber. I decided, my relationship improved, my life improved. I developed this new zeal and zest for life, because before I was just sort of in a zombie state, and it was very challenging for me to get out of that state. But I'm glad I did. I felt like my life was not in my hands, but it's now in my hands. I've reclaimed my agency over my own life.
Did you know the number one way to build wealth is through real estate? Have you always wanted to buy your first income property, but you didn't know where to start? Join my group, Legacy Wealth Builders, where we will teach you how to buy your first income property and then keep your wealth by teaching the success and wealth principles to your kids. Because it's not just about building your wealth, but it's about keeping it for generations to come. So click the link, join our group, because for the month of June, the group is free. So get all the training you need and join the group now. So in that moment where you saw the pills and you're like threw it across, was there like an inner voice? Was there a song playing? Like, what was that like? Because I think that's where a lot of people are there, they live in what I call the quiet desperation. They want
Mm-hmm.
to change something, they're struggling, they're depressed, even thoughts of ending their life maybe come in their head, even if they don't do it. It's just that feeling of hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
Was there something that helped trigger you to be like, no, I have the control. I'm not letting anybody else control my life other than me?
100%. There was an inner voice, and I've learned in my life to always listen to the inner voice. When I have it and try to logically reason why I should not listen, the decision has never been a good one.
Yeah.
So there was an inner voice, and it was basically telling me, this is not the person you're meant to be. You're
Yeah.
not meant to just sit here on the couch and do nothing. You've got great things to do, and it's time to reclaim your health. And the bottom line is, the voice also sometimes is not like a little voice. It's just this feeling, and it all kind of comes through me at once.
Mm-hmm.
It reaffirmed that nobody cares about my life more than I do,
Right.
especially like a random doctor I saw for 30 minutes, right?
Right.
Uh, so it's up to me to take control of my life and make the decisions that I feel are best for me. I can certainly take advice from other people,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's advice, and it's up to me to make that decision. And I prefer to have agency over my own life
Yeah.
and live with the consequences of my decisions. Of course, I can do what I can do to inform my decisions, which I
Yeah.
did with all the blood tests and um, the Doppler ultrasound and a few other things I got done. But yeah, that for sure went through my head, and I listened. It had gone through my head many times before, and I tried to rationalize, well, I should just be grateful for living this sort of mundane life that is really
Right.
not the kind of life I wanted to live.
Right.
And so it took me a while to actually pay attention to the voice.
Well, I think you said something profound there, and I just want the audience to really hear this. You are living a comfortable life, but were you really living? So many people live in a life, but are you really living? Meaning, are you giving your gifts? Are you feeling fulfilled? You might even have success, but is it in that what I call the vanity forum, right? Like without fulfillment, without that drive, that purpose, that passion every single day. And I hear this a lot with people who go through a health scare,
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, well, I should just be grateful that I'm alive. Well, you know what? We all should just be grateful that, especially if you do live in America, that we are breathing in, what I believe to be the best country in the world. Now I might be biased, but, in a country that really has, I shouldn't say the best country. I should say a country that gives us almost the most freedoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, we thought we had it bad during COVID. And over in Ireland, it's like you can hardly walk outside to get your newspaper without the cops coming, right? So it's
That's
like
right.
we all have these things where it's like we should be. But it's like if it's a life that you aren't destined for, is it really living? And that was one thing that it really stood out to me because you still like, I don't know what your finances were at that time, but I know you had some extra expenses with the bills, but it's like, oh, I should be, I had a good career, my finances are okay, oh, I'm
Mhm.
healthier now, I should be this. But if you're not living to your full potential, I think we all live in that kind of quiet desperation where it's like, but what about this? Like you had in you another business, right? Because you created Blue Go after, right?
Right.
You had and I don't know what your relationship is now at the time, but it's like we have these relationships with people, whether it's intimate or just friendships that are dying inside of us to grow. And when we just kind of live in like, oh, we should be grateful. We should be grateful. Well, grateful is a state of being no matter what, but that doesn't mean that you have to sit there and just sip coffee and let the world go idly by. I think
Mhm.
what you did was say, like, I'm comfortable, but I'm really not living. I'm breathing, but I'm not living. Because I believe living is like your calling, your purpose, your full potential. That doesn't always mean creating businesses for people. A lot of the people that are listening here, are business creators, but it could just be, having amazing passionate relationships or being a grandparent or being, an amazing spouse or parent or those type of things. So I love that you said that because I feel like so many people get stuck in that the grateful trap. It's like I should
Mhm.
be this so I don't have to do that. And it's like, well, grateful is just kind of a state of being. Like you're grateful even for the struggle. Like that's the whole premise of this podcast is to look at what you went through, even though as horrific as it was, where are you now? Like what could you say has come out of that that's been so beautiful?
Well, I'm working on a new book, a couple new books, and one of
Mhm.
them is about sort of overcoming that because I think in life at least for me, I oscillate between these various stages, and I think we
Mhm.
all do. And at first, I was comfortable.
Yep.
I thought I'm alive, I'm existing.
Mhm.
But I had that that shifted that quiet desperation, feeling trapped,
Yeah.
uh, or feeling caged, as some people like to say.
Yep.
And that I don't like being caged, so I shifted from comfortable to caged, and I wanted to get out of that. And that is where I knew I wasn't living. So I went. Ironically, I went from trapped, which I think manifested in the blood clots, uh, to comfortable to trapped again. And I had to decide to take control of my life. And everything shifted. As I mentioned, I developed the confidence. It's hard to be confident when you feel caged or trapped.
Yeah.
But I developed the confidence in my new business. I've already made more top line revenue in 1 year than I made in took me six to make with my first business. So I've applied the skills,
Yeah.
and I did have another business in me, but I almost didn't let it out. I almost just succumbed to the quiet desperation, like you were saying. I like that phrase, and the story I had told myself, and that's part of my next book as well. That story was I should just be grateful for existing, but that is not the story that I want to have. So
Right.
I had to change the story and change my behavior to match the story that my new narrative, basically.
Right. Right. And I love that. I love existing. It's like we just exist. Well, you know what? The cavemen just exist. They just survived. Every day was just like, I want to not die by the tiger. Right. But we're humans. We have a brain. We're creative. You were creative. Like you had businesses. You were obviously an ambitious, driven person because you're doing Ironmans. I've done just a few triathlons. And so I can't even imagine doing an Ironman. So the fact that you're this person who has the drive to go out and do something and then we kind of settle, because of either circumstances, people, or our culture. Like with COVID, a lot of people had to do things that they aren't naturally wanting to do, like sit at home and not be active and give a hug to a friend. We all want to do that.
Right.
And um but what I love about you is the resilience of that, because you went through this hardship for whatever reason, whatever your belief system, the universe, God, like he was like, you need to go through this because who knows, maybe you wouldn't have created Blue Goat. Maybe you would have just stayed comfortable and, been okay. Nothing really happens. But then bam, you have this event. Someone who's listening today has an event that happens that we don't like, makes us uncomfortable. It hurts. It's painful. It's
Mhm.
suffering. But if you can stick the course, if you can tether to something, if you can see beyond the existing and saying, I am created to thrive, there's passion, love, joy every single day, I can still not like where I'm at and be grateful. See, I'm like, I kind of struggle with that myself because I'm a mom to 5 beautiful daughters, but I have a drive to impact people. But
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh, you should just be grateful for the family that you have and you should just be grateful that your husband provides for you." I'm totally grateful for that. But that doesn't mean that I just want to sit at home and like watch them play Legos or Barbies. Like I still want to go out there and inspire and use my voice as, a single person. So, I love your story, Christian. I think it holds so much for people, especially during that time. Cause I feel like we're like that, you know, um, almost like, you know, people went through a world war and it was like post World War and they're kind of like, now what?
Mhm.
When all the women went to the factories and then the men came home, they're like, okay, go back to what you were doing. And they're like, I don't want to do that. We're kind of post COVID. It's like there's pre COVID what people were doing, or, and then we had all these restrictions, all these struggles. And then now it's like post COVID, people are like, what do I know we're doing with this recession? Um, Workforces aren't what they were before. Could I be my own boss? Do I have a business and I'm created? So I think your story is igniting people who might be in that quiet desperation right now that says, you know what, I am just existing and I don't want to just exist. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
what?
I decided that I would rather accept the risk of maybe dying doing things I love to do. Like I did a half Ironman last year, and I hiked the Grand Canyon. I'd rather die doing those things, like living an exciting life,
Yeah.
than live longer and in that quiet desperation state.
Yeah.
That was my, I just had to like come to those terms
Yeah.
because I was miserable in that state and I wasn't contributing. I
Yeah.
was just playing it safe, and I'm not somebody that likes to play it safe.
No, not with the accolades that I started with. That is not somebody who likes to like play it under the table. That's for sure. And you said you might live longer. I think you're just actually you're breathing, but you're dying. When
Yeah.
you live a life that you don't love. I mean, yes, is there times in your life where you're struggling and you're frustrated? Of course. But if you're literally like, I don't want to get up in the morning, I don't, what do I have to live for? That hopeless feeling, you're just slowly dying. You're just kind of breathing while you're doing it, But like you said, if I'm actually living and going out and there's a reason why risky behavior can be addictive. It's, naturally we get the endorphins, the adrenaline. There's certain things that by nature pull us towards that. There's a reason by design, because when you live and you feel that and you feel good, then you want to continue that, and some of us have kind of pushed that down and been dormant because we're trying to be responsible, because maybe we're a parent or we have to take care of somebody else, and we don't want to do those things, those risky behaviors, whether it's skydiving or starting a business, putting all our money into something that may or may not happen. So give our audience a little bit, because you have created businesses and you've done some of these like fun thrill seeking. What would be just some advice for somebody who's maybe teetering on this? Like they want to live life again, they want to feel life again, but they're in that quiet desperation. What would be something that you could give them that they could, do to move the needle or get out of that place?
I think a lot of people are held back because they think everything needs to perfectly align before they take a first step in a different direction.
Yeah.
I think if you can listen to your inner voice, it's probably telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And if it's telling you to go a different direction, just work to develop the courage to take the first step and know that it might be a step in a slightly wrong direction, but you can always change it along the way.
Yeah.
And I like to think of, I've read a lot of books about people on their deathbeds and the regrets they have. And most people have regrets about not doing something. They had this inner drive to do and this inner knowing to do, and they decided to play it safe. And
Yep.
they, it could be start a business. It could be ask that girl out, or it could be have children or travel more, whatever it is.
Yep.
That people have that regret a lot. And I like to think, if I'm on my deathbed, am I going to have those regrets? And I want the answer to be no on all fronts of my life, in health, wealth, and relationships.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you have that voice that tells you to do it, and I know you invest in real estate too, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and me and my husband are real estate investors, and I work with other people who want to. We get that question all the time because me and my husband have invested since we were in college, and they
Mm-hmm.
always say, "Oh, we've always wanted to do that," and I'm like, "Why haven't you?" And well, it's always this and that's the other thing. It's like there's always a way when you really want to do something. We live in the era where there is help and information and mentors and guidance and contracts to help keep you safe and legit, so you don't get sued. We have all these things to help people, and it's like they still kind of live in that fear, that comfort. I don't know. Do you see that with what you do, or like come across people in what you do?
I come across people all the time that say, "I wish I could do that. I wish I'm too old." There's all these excuses, and my answer is, if you want to do it, find a way.
Yeah.
Or just continue to make excuses,
Right.
and then you'll never do it. I mean, it's really that simple.
Yep.
If you want to do something, find a way. We are way more resourceful than we think we are,
Yeah.
and if we have clarity on what we want to do, it's amazing how the pieces will fall in place. But
Yeah.
if we don't have clarity, we just kind of go through life like a zombie, walking
Yep.
from thing to thing.
Right.
Of course, we're not going to develop the courage to do anything. But if we have clarity and we listen to that inner voice,
Hmm.
the steps become clearer. And I think complexity is the enemy of execution, and we often make it more complex in our
Yeah.
head than it is. If we just need to take the first step,
Yeah.
and then once we take that first step, we develop more competence, and then more confidence, and it's easier to take the second step.
Yep.
So I highly encourage people to change the mentality of, I'm too old, I don't know this, I wish I would have done it. Listen to yourself and take the first step and realize you'll find a way.
Yeah.
And if you don't, maybe it's not for you. Because resilience plays a lot in this too. As a business owner or an Ironman triathlete or building a long-term relationship, there's a resilience factor.
Yeah.
And I think resilience is an amazing skill to have.
Yeah.
And it's one that we have sort of like dwindled away in our society for some reason.
Right. Well, because I think what you said is true. It's like, okay, if you do something and it doesn't come out like you thought, maybe the thing will lead to the thing that leads to the thing you're supposed to do. But so often we're like, we have to have it be this particular way, or we compare ourselves because we're the Instagram nation where everyone's comparing, looking at their phones and saying, "Oh, well, I'm not a triathlete like Christian was, and so like because I can't do it that way, then I don't." Right? And it's like, no, if you just take the steps, we have all these how-tos on YouTube, right? Like all these information. And it's like, well, they said in 3 steps, I was going to have an online business and it was going to be, giving me 6 figures a month. And it's like,
Right.
but what if the process of you building that company is what led you to XYZ? Maybe it led to meeting somebody that was going to advance you in a different way, or spiritually, or maybe in business, but you weren't meant to be a coach. You were meant to be a podcaster. If you weren't meant to be a podcaster, you were meant to create this business. We get so engulfed in the destination that even though it sounds like a fortune cookie, it really is about the journey of like, if you just trust the journey, that the journey will produce it. Then I feel like that. And I feel like that is so much in your journey because you had this business, you sold it for stock, and then we had this world shutdown, and everything you knew that was comfortable was gone.
Well, plus the stock went from like $6 to 10 cents during all that. So all the money I thought I had just evaporated pretty quickly.
Everything, like your full identity was like in the toilet.
Pretty
But
much,
you know
yes.
what? Like looking back at that, I know it wasn't a beautiful time, but I look at that and I see so much beauty because everything that you had was stripped away. All the comforts that you had, every single thing, your relationship, your money, your identity of who you were, and it was stripped away and you had opportunity to go one or two ways. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, this is not my story. I am not going down like that. I am a fighter. I don't care if I faltered. Like I am going out with resilience and pride, whether I die on the top of a mountain, loving the love of my life, struggling to start another business, I'm going to do it. And I feel like so much of us have that inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said, it's actually not the negative people that stop us. It's almost the comfort of people. Like, it's okay. You don't need to do that. You've had so much success before. You should just be grateful, you know? And it's like, and we kind of like, because it sounds good, like, okay, like that sounds good. Because if somebody comes at me and says you can't do something, I'm gonna come back fighting. Like I'm gonna be like, no, oh, you said I couldn't do that, But if somebody comes and says, Tab, you're a great mom and you've done some great things, you don't need to think big, you really don't need to go after that. Like, oh, you don't need to be a billionaire, like that's for whatever it is. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that sounds really nice. So I'm not, okay, I can be that. And then I'm like, wait a second. I have dreams. I have aspirations. I have desires in my heart that I know are stewing. I love what you said. It's like, I'm a caged animal. Like I got to get out there, and do that.
Yeah.
So I know there's some people on here that this is resonating, whether it's them starting a business, maybe it's just committing to a loved one, and saying, you know what, I am scared but I'm going to do it anyway, or I'm scared to do that business, or I'm scared to become a parent or whatever. It's like, you
Right.
know what? It's true what they say. Like on the other side of fear in the journey, like you do become the person that you need to be to withstand that. And I think your story attests to that so much. So thank you so much for sharing with us. We will have all of Christian's connections, the way you can like social media and websites. But is there anything coming up or anything that you want to give a little shout out on the podcast?
I was just thinking of one thing as you were speaking about how a lot of people say, "Oh, you should be comfortable, you should be grateful. You've done a lot." Because people told me this too. They said,
Yeah.
"You've accomplished so much. Why don't you just relax and chill out, Christian?" And I wrote about this in my first book, and it was a condition I noticed in Ireland a lot. It's called tall poppy syndrome, and what it means is people want to make other people feel comfortable, and they often don't want to have them rise to their potential because that forces the mirror to turn on the person that doesn't want the other person to rise to their potential. Because then they're like, oh, well, they did it, so maybe I should do it. So there's this weird dynamic that plays out where everyone tries to hold each other down. Like
Yeah.
the tall poppy, we don't want a tall poppy because it makes the other poppies look like they should be growing too. It's like
Yeah.
this weird dynamic in human society where those are not the people to listen to. Listen
Right.
to the other tall poppies, the
Yeah.
ones that are taller than you is who you
Yeah.
should be listening to.
Yes, and that's why it's so important to get around other like-minded people. And I think you said this like not the smartest person in the room. Did you
That's
say?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it's that same thing. I try to get into rooms where I am not the smartest person. I'm not the prettiest person. I don't have the best, longest marriage. I don't have the most kids or whatever room. I'm like, I want to be in the room where I'm actually small and people, say, no, 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 I want to be small because I want to go to other people and learn how I can grow and learn
Yes.
how I can be tall again. Because it's like, if you don't, for me, it's like you're shrinking. So it's like, I'll go into these rooms and I just ask a lot of questions and I observe and I try not to go in there with like, I'm going to impress somebody. Cause I used to be that in my 20s. Like I have to impress people. But now it's like, I'll go into a room and it's like, I want to impact people in a way. So I might have that kind of urge, but it's like, I want to soak up, like, how did they get there? And even with this, it's like, if if I knew I could talk to you for another hour, I'd ask you like about your business and how'd you get there, and all the success tools, because it's like
Yeah.
I know that you can learn so much from people by just being the stupidest person in the room,
By
and
just
so
being
it's like,
curious. Yeah.
yes, yes, and doing that in such a way that's, elegant. You can't be, that annoying kid in the room, but it's like I like to go in and just observe and hear the wisdom, that other people have experienced, because we all have it. And your experience and my experience, it's like you have wisdom in different ways. So thank you so much, Christian, for taking the time and sharing your story with us. I know whenever we go through that, it's not always easy coming, back to it and going to that pit, but you did with elegance and transparency, and I thank you for that. And my audience, if you guys are going through something right now where maybe you are in that hopeless feeling or trapped, or you're that caged animal, remember, if you just stick through it and you tether yourself to other people that who are the tall poppies, and you're resilient, your what went wrong will lead to the what went right. Until next time, thanks for listening.